No fluff tonight, guys. What is going on? This is your host, Lawrence, over at Mighty Comics and Collectibles, and welcome back to the show. What is going on? We have some breaking news today, and everyone and the mother on YouTube has really already covered this thing, but I wanted to jump on with you guys tonight to talk about it because I think it's a big deal in comic books right now. We have a new challenger, and if you guys are a Street Fighter fan like I was when you were a kid, you kind of get this thumbnail. Here comes a new challenger to the comic book market space. And you guys know what I'm talking about right here. We're going to get into this tonight. But before we get started, like every video, I ask you guys, if you are not a current subscriber of the channel, you guys are definitely missing out. Brand new content here. Hot 10 Comics of the Week breakdown. We do a monthly Elite Comics 11 Instagram sales video where you guys get actual sales prices on books that were listed on their consignment page and much more than that. Once we get to 8,000 subs, you guys know I'm doing a massive giveaway. So if you're not already subbed, do yourself a favor, hit that sub button, smash the like button for me as well. But let's get into it right now. As I was saying, we got some huge news today that PSA is going to be entering the comic book market slabbing marketplace in 2025. We do not know exactly when that's going to happen in 2025, but it is going to happen. And a lot of things crossed my mind when I first saw this. Some good, some bad, and we're going to get into it here tonight. I want to say hello to Jose Gutierrez, who is in the chat. What's going on, brother? Horvath, how are you doing, brother? So they're saying right off the bat that CGC needs a new competitor, and I totally agree with them. We're going to get into it, but I want to just put this up on the screen so you guys can see it. This is what they're calling their slab right now. And again, I do not know if this is a mock-up, if this is the actual thing. Are we going to get improvements to this thing? As you can see, if you guys are familiar with PSA, that is the standard PSA label that you get when you buy cards. So they're really just taking that label and slapping it on a comic book. But again, I don't think this is the finished product. At least I hope it's not, because there are reasons I'm going to explain to you guys where this may be an issue for certain comic books. So don't go anywhere, right? So the first thing that crossed my mind, I want to say to you guys this, is I'm glad that we're getting a new competitor into the comic space, and I'm glad we're getting a competitor who has slabbed other things. And right now, PSA is the leader in card grading, 100%. Nobody can go out and say that right now. Back in the day, Beckett was the #1 card grader there was, and all of a sudden, about 5-6 years ago, PSA exploded and is taken over that space by a majority. It's not even close anymore. You guys know I do garbage fill videos here on the channel. A lot of those cards are graded by PSA as well. Sports cards, Pokemon, anything you guys can think of. And now they're entering the comic space. So I want you guys to take a look at this slab for a second. I want you guys to take a look at this label. Everyone here in the chat, if you're watching at home as well, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the slab itself? I'm not going to give you my information until a little bit down the line, because I have a lot of issues with it, and some good, some bad, but questions more than issues. So the first thing I want to say is, yes, I'm 100% happy we're getting another grading company into the space. We all know CBCS has been the #2 for a really long time, and they haven't taken advantage of a lot of CGC missteps, and there have been a ton of missteps. Unfortunately, there's also been a lot of, what's the word I want to use? I don't even know the word I want to use, but there's been a bunch of sneaky stuff that has been going on at CGC, from, employees swapping out books to, obviously, we had that whole scam where collectors are swapping out books and getting it recased, stuff like that. We all know about those. But if you haven't watched Thorough's channel, Keep It Thorough, he's a great comic book YouTuber. He exposed another lawsuit that CGC is dealing with regarding, restoration on books from a certain company. So there's just a lot going on, a lot of sneaky business that should not be going on with people who we trust with our comic books and our collectibles. And I'm not just, narrowing it down to comics. The one thing I have learned is that PSA is, there's also some question marks with PSA. There's a lot of people out there who speculate that PSA is very hard on grading cards. And a lot of people speculate that that is because they want to keep, gem mint 10s and super high grade cards that are limited to a limited amount. which I totally agree with. And I don't think that's necessarily good for comics. So it's good that they're entering into space. Only time will tell. We have no idea what's going to happen until they actually come out with this lab and people actually start submitting books to them. But hopefully, I do plan to send something, at least one book into them to see how the process works and so on and so forth. So before I go any further, I want to say hello to the rest of the people who have jumped in the chat. We have Robert Davis, what's going on? Channel member, what's going on, brother? How are you? He might jump on with us later. Chad W. Thank you very much, brother. The Star family. Why no love for PGX or EGS? So I am a person, if you guys go way back in my videos, I have actually used PGX. I've used CBCS. I've used CGC. Obviously, I haven't used PSA yet. They're not out. I have yet to use EGS. If you want my answer to that, is only because I am not a fan of their slab. I know they changed their slab recently, and I'm not really a fan of their label. Outside of that, I have no problem with them. I think multiple people and companies can exist in the space. It's your preference who you want to use. Sometimes here on YouTube and other YouTubers will point out the good and the bad from their experience using those companies. And I can point out that PGX, CGC, and CBCS I have used, so I can give you my opinion on those companies. Outside of that, I have not used EGS, so I can't say it's been good or bad experience for me. But you use who you want to use. No one's going to stop you here on this channel. Chris from We Love Comics. How you doing, brother? How you doing? He says, competition is always beneficial, so I support this. They do have to make a better label, though, because everything is just too small and unattractive, in my opinion. That's something definitely we're going to talk about today. The label is definitely not the brightest thing that they have done. I think they can get away with it on cards. I'm not too sure they can get away with it with comics, but we'll address that in a little bit. Pretty bland. They need to really spice it up visually. They have the capital to get some artists and product development people in there. I'm not sure that that's PSA's thing. They really want to just put the information out there for you guys in the blandest way possible and get it out. So from my experience, I think they want everything to be uniform, but that's just me, and we're going to find out. It did say in the website that did report this, that they're open to comments from people who are in the comic book collecting community. So if you do have suggestions for them, I suggest you contact them. I know you can find them at PSA Cards and Instagram. I'm sure you can find an email out there as well. Jedi Force says, God, they better not be using the ugly label. I used to create a lot of cards years ago before I started my We Love Comics channel. The reason PSA grew over Beckett is because Beckett would grade harsher and PSA would grade higher grades. So now that this actually turned out to the opposite now. I don't know way back when, but now they are super hard on cards. You can look at some of the cards and not see a flaw, and it could come back a PSA 8. Now, I'm actually going to show you an example of a card that I have in a little bit, and there is no flaw on this card, but I also want you to take a look at something else that I'm going to point out. Horvath says, I love ugly labels. Makes my covers look even better by comparison. What's going on, John? How you doing, brother? Jose says, I will be sending in my Hulk 181 for PSA pressing and grading when they start accepting submissions. Bold move. Bold move. I am going to send a book in. It may not be a high dollar value book, but I'm going to try it out. I can say that. PSA oversized slabs, quality, great feel. Well, we're going to touch on that as well. So if you guys don't know this about PSA with cards, if you guys don't submit cards, is that they actually tend to send a lot of cards back without being graded, saying sizing is an issue for them, fitting it into their slab. And that's something I was going to touch on later, but I might as well just mention it right now. Look at the screen, guys, okay? Look at the slab we have here. And I know this is a prototype, but as you can see right off the bat, there's no inner well. Okay, PSA slabs don't have an inner well on cards, and I don't believe that they're going to have them on comics. So as you can see, we have a nice, clean copy. They're calling it a 9.4 of Incredible Hulk 181. What are they going to do with a Silver Age book? Are they going to have a different slab for a Silver Age as opposed to Bronze Age? What about Golden Age? A bigger size for a Golden Age slab as opposed to Silver and Bronze? Modern, same thing. Slimmer. What happens if someone submits a book that has a bad spine roll? I myself have a FF5, First Doctor Doom. It has a bad spine roll, but it's signed by Stan Lee, witness signature, so I don't really want to mess around with that. How are they going to fit this into a slab, considering it is so snug there in the well? There's no inner well like inside, like the plastic, like the thin plastic, the bag they put it in, basically. It's just smack between the two hard pieces of plastic and that they mold together. So how are they going to fit a Silver Age comic, which has a standard size, into a regular slab like this? That is a question I want to ask, and I need to hear that from PSA. They may figure out a way to do it. Again, this is a prototype. We may see something totally different when they actually go ahead and launch this thing. But that is one of the biggest questions I have. And it only made me think it because, one, of the picture that they posted, but two, because somebody else brought up the fact that they send a lot of cards back saying unable to be, slab because they can't fit or the sizing is improper for their slab. So that's a big deal. What would you do if you sent in a Hulk 181 and it came back with the grade on the label but wasn't slabbed? You'd be pissed off, right? That'd be crazy. So I want to see how they're going to handle this on the comic side of things. It looks like a first generation CGC label, like the old. That's what I thought of too. The old modern labels that they used to have when CGC first came out, the maroon ones. It kind of looks like that. Even though I got to say, on a card, it looks a lot better because the surface area is smaller. On a comic, it's huge. Again, I want to address some of these comments, and I'm going to get into my next point that I don't like about this. He said Chad says the label makes a big difference for me. It does to an extent, but the case makes a bigger difference in my opinion. Yeah, the label is not the greatest thing, especially when we're comparing CGC's label, which is we all agree is the nicest label, especially the yellow labels now. All right, so let me just go right into it. You guys are looking at the slab they have pictured. I don't like the frosting outside of the comic book, and I know it's a lot more minimal on the graded cards. It's a lot less noticeable. There's, like I said before, the surface area is a lot smaller. So I don't like the way this looks. And you guys know I'm a big presentation guy. I like to display my comics, and I don't slab a lot of comics, so it's not a huge deal to me, but I don't like the way this looks. If this wasn't, I would like this to be translucent so I could see through it. I think that would look a lot better. I think that's a big deal for a lot of collectors, but I don't have the slab in front of me. Maybe it's a nice thin, slab, like their card cases are very thin. I really do enjoy it. And the best thing about PSA is that they're really hard to get into. I know they had a couple of scandals where people actually slipping the label out of these things, but if you ever have tried to crack a PSA slab, it is very hard to get into without actually noticing that something has been done to the slab itself. So I do believe that once they roll this thing out, that their slab will be pretty tamper-proof. I'm pretty solid in saying that, but they better fix it, right? That's the big thing with CGC, is that their slab right now is a big issue. We've seen many people on YouTube do it. Obviously, we had the big scandal going on where someone was doing it and then selling the books on eBay for ridiculous amounts of money and on IG pages. So security is a big factor. The next big factor, why does everyone use CGC, right? Why does everyone use CGC? Is because they resell for the most value. I think a lot of collectors, that is their main reason for submitting to CGC. Maybe because they were the first company to come out and do it. Maybe because they like their labels better. There's a whole slew of reasons why people use CGC as opposed to some of the other grading companies. I actually like CBCS's new labels. Their cases are nice as well, but at the same time, they don't command the dollar amounts that CGC slabs do. And I think a lot of people who are willing to spend money on bigger books, they care. Not everybody. Some people don't care. They just want to use who they want to use, that they're comfortable with. And that's totally fine. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't do anything. You do what you're comfortable with. But a majority of collectors out there use CGC because of the things I just mentioned. So if you have resale value, a lot of the times people are going to flock that way. We're only going to find out if PSA is going to be successful is when we find out what their slabs are selling for. If a 9.4 Hulk 181, and I don't know the value off the top of my head on a CGC slab, if this sells for a lot less or even marginally less than a CGC 9.4, it does not matter, because I think a lot of people aren't going to be switching over. And it doesn't matter what CGC has done in the past, whether you believe that that's the right or wrong thing, people are not going to do it. Excuse me, let me take a sip. Again, everyone has their own opinions. I myself, you guys don't, I don't submit a lot of books. I haven't done a submission in a really long time. I like to keep my books raw. With that said, I do believe slabbing books is a thing and it's not going anywhere. Majority of books will be slabbed going forward down the line. There is no question about that. The problem is that, one, value, like I just talked about. Two, the appearance is the next thing I'm going to talk about. People love those CGC labels. People love those special labels, the Marvel labels. People love those things. Signature Series yellow labels. Now they have those nice yellow JSA black labels as well, the pedigree gold and black labels. People like those things. So if PSA is only going to come out with this and nothing else, I think they're going to have a big issue with those collectors who only want to slab books with CGC because, one, they're selling for more, and now because of the appearance of those books. And people are going to come at me in the comments saying, well, why are you grading books only for appearance? That's part of the issue. For some collectors, especially like myself, who display their stuff, who like to look at their books, I was never the collector who just liked to leave books in a short box or a long box and then pull them out once in a blue moon to take a look at them. No, I want to look at my stuff. I want to be surrounded by my stuff. I want to be in this moment when I come into this room to say, you know what? I can be at peace here. I could look at all the things I've been able to accomplish, look at the stuff that I have that I was able to acquire over many years. It makes me happy. And I think it makes other collectors happy as well. So I think PSA has to address those issues with cards. And I'm going to switch the screen and then I'll get to some of your comments, guys. I want you to take a look at this. So again, I have some PSA cards. You guys know I'm a Garbage Pail Kids collector. This is a PSA Atom Bomb in a near mint 8. If you guys could tell me or notice one thing wrong with this card, and I only have the front picture, but I can tell you the back is just as pristine and glossy. What is a 10? You want to tell me that this is a 9? Okay, I got no argument there. What makes this an 8 that a 10 is not? And that has been the knock on PSA, is that they're extremely hard on grading cards, and that's to keep the gem mint 10s and those 9s down, especially on rarer cards. I know Atom Bomb is not a rare card. There's plenty of them out there, but in gem mint 10s, there can't be too many of them. I don't know if there's a census for these things, if PSA tracks those things or not. I believe they do. I just don't know if they're just sports cards or they do GPK, because I've never really gotten into census count for these type of cards. But with that said, they like to keep those counts down on those mints. Why? Because this raises the value on those cards. So if they're grading your comics harsher because of that, especially on Bronze Age books, modern books where there's a lot more copies out there, there are a lot more pristine copies out there, and they're going to be harder on those books. Is that really beneficial to them? Again, I'm throwing out these ideas right now because that's what we've seen through the cards. I'm not saying it's going to happen. We don't know until they start rolling out comics, and it's going to take a while, right? I don't think you're going to get people switching over from CGC right away over to PSA. You probably have some people in the beginning who are like, all right, like me, like, let's test it out and see how they do. I think CBCS and some of these other companies, if PSA is cheaper, if PSA can get books out quick, if PSA goes for more selling than these other companies do, that's when there'll be an issue. Those companies will have a hard time competing in the space if PSA can command a higher dollar amount than, let's say, CBCS, PGX, EGS, whatever you want to call it. I'm skeptical that they're going to take full market share from CGC, but remains to be seen. It's early in the game. They just announced this thing. We have a long time before they can take over. PSA was around, I think, since the late 1990s, and they've only really taken over and become the biggest thing in cards since when? Like 5 to 7 years ago, maybe, in my mind. So please correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I believe that's the time frame. So it's going to take a while for them to do it. But if CGC keeps stepping on their own toes and we have scandal after scandal, lawsuit after lawsuit, people stealing books, and that happens again, or something else happens, and let's be honest, they haven't been forthright about a lot of things, CGC. We're not hiding anything here on this channel. I'm not an advocate for anybody. I'm an advocate for myself and for the comic collectors out there who I know and have been hurt by whatever has happened. So I'm just here for what's good for the hobby, or whatever keeps me and us coming back to the hobby and doing certain things. That's what I want. So with that said, let me catch up on the chat a little bit because I have a lot of comments here, which I'm happy about. Where did I leave off? Okay. So Chris says, the one thing that seems troubling to me is the case doesn't look any different from anybody else's. This is the time where somebody should come up with a better, stronger case. I think that if you ever check out a PSA card case, they're very secure and they're very thin, which I actually like. CGC cases are like this. The CBCS is, I think, a little thinner than that. I haven't seen a PGX case in a while, so I can't tell you how thin they are, but PSA's card case is very, very thin, which I like. But again, I don't like the frosted material. I like to be able to see through everything. I think that's a better look if you for display purposes, but I'm neurotic when it comes to that things. But I know other collectors are just as neurotic as me. Yes, they are grading magazines to start, I heard. That's what they said. I don't know if they'll roll them out right when they roll out comics, but they are going to grade magazines as well. Chris says if PSA grades harshly, then the community is not going to go near them. The reason most people use CGC is because they will give higher grades like 9, 9s, and 10s. I agree. If they're going to be shy giving on proper grades, and that's the issue I'm talking about. We all know that CGC has been more beneficial to certain people than others. People will say that's skepticism. To me, it's not. To me, I've seen some crazy grades. You've seen that 9.9, a couple of 9.9s that should not be 9.9s, in my opinion. But if they start withholding grades and the grades are not what they should be, then that's going to be a problem for PSA. I remember way back when, and I'm going to give you my experience when I used CBCS, is that when I first submitted to CBCS, they were considered the more harsher grader at that time. So people would always say to me, why are you submitting to CBCS? They're a lot harder on the books. I said, yeah, I get it, but I still want to try and see, if I like their service better than CGC. With that said, they had my books for like a year and a half at one point, and I said, forget it, never again. That was a long time ago. Ever since then, I've used CGC, but like I said, I haven't submitted books in a really long time. So yeah, if the grades aren't right, forget if they're 9.9s or 10s. I want the grade to be right. If the grade is right, do it. Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you this right now. Whoever doesn't want to hear this, people don't submit comics for grading. When you submit a comic to CGC, no one cares. Like, they care about the grade, they care about the value. That's the meaning when someone sends it. There are some collectors out there who just like to have their book slab. They like the process. They like having the slabs instead of raw books. I'm the opposite. I like raw books. Awesome. I think that's great. Nobody cares about the grade. They care about the value. So again, that's why CGC is number one. But also, if your book comes back, and I'm not going to use a modern book. Let's use like a Silver Age book. If your book comes back a 7.0 compared to a 5.0, that's a big deal. You don't care about the 7.0 or the 5. You care about the dollar amount that you have just made by the grade CGC or whoever gave that book. That's the issue with grading. And that's where the problem lies with grading. If we just cared about the grade that we would have, I don't think people would care at all. There are collectors out there who want the highest grade possible they can afford on their books because that's just what they like. They would like to have higher grades. They want to spend bigger dollar amounts. So down the road, they can recoup bigger dollar amounts. They want the highest grade possible because that's what they want in their collection. Awesome. I'm the opposite. I just want to own the book, so I don't care what the grade is. But I think a lot of people who do submit, they don't really care about the grade as much. They care about the value. So he brought up what I was just talking about before that. Get ready for a magazine slab for your silvers. And again, if they keep the case, and I'll bring up that picture again, if they keep the case with no inner well and it's, right up against the plastic, they're not fitting a Silver Age book. Let's say they have a standard Silver Age case. They're not fitting a book with a bad spiral in this case. There's no way, unless they're going to mangle the book. So they have to do something, right? They can't just leave it like this unless they plan on returning some of these books saying, cannot fit in the holder like they do with the cards. That's a possibility right now. But again, we don't know. This is all speculation. Let me say it right now, all speculation. But these are questions that need to be answered by PSA. Like, I want them to take market share from CGC. I want collectors to be able to have a choice of saying, you know what? If I send my book to PSA or any company out there, that I'm going to get the same value that I would sending to CGC. And that's what it's about. That's the only thing it's about. And of course, we want the right grade. But they throw that grading of subjective out there, right? So the right grade is the right grade, but it's subjective. That's why I tend to not buy super high grade books, because that's where it gets iffy. Why do we have grades that go from to 0.5 all the way up, and then when we get to 9, we get to 2, 4, 6, 8, now 9, 9, and a 10. The 9, 9 shouldn't be there. I'll be honest with you. That makes no sense. I don't even think that 9 4s and 9 2s, it's so hard to decipher. I get a 9 6. You have a spine tick. You could still get a 9 6. and that's the only flaw. You have one flaw, 9.6. To me, there should barely be any 10s, right? There should barely be any 10s, but there's no such thing as a 9.9. It's either a 9.8 or a 10. What's the difference between a 9.8 and a 9.9? If you could tell me with a straight face, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you have some knowledge and you're right. CGC can't tell you what the difference is. That's the problem. There's no definitive answer. Chris says he's got to go feed 500 different cats. Take care. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that, buddy. What about the Golden Age books and the bigger and thicker? I'm sure they're going to have a different slab for each era. They have to, because they can't fit everything into one slab. Just like CGC has the magazine style for anything that won't fit in a regular slab. But again, their slab is big enough to fit, all the eras of books up to magazines. They have that option to put it in a magazine, though. Golden Age book. We don't have an option here, according to the picture that I'm seeing. But again, it's early on. Was going to ask if 2023, the product quality control was horrible with CGC some slabs. I have seen some wonky cases where the inner layer was too prominent on sides, or maybe as adhesive. That's been the standard for a long time now. There's always been issues with slabs, whether it's be dried glue, whether it's been, the inner well loose, whether there's been stuff inside the slab itself, outside of the inner wall that you could see, like a hair or something like that. Cracked cases are another thing. So there's always going to be production quality issues, I think, with all these companies. It's just very prominent with CGC because I don't know if it's because they're busy or they're, lackluster workflow. I'll call it that. Whatever you want to call it, it's been more prominent with CGC. Star Family says the frosting is okay. I don't like the label. It is easy to put a Hulk Wolverine pic on top along with some colorful label and insightful text. So I agree. The PSA label is something that is very bland. But I got to be honest, I don't think they're going to change that because they want to be uniform with their cards. And this is not it. PSA will eventually start doing other stuff as well. As a company, when you become the top dog in your space, like CGC is, like PSA is in cards, what's the next step? Your next step is expansion, right? CGC, why did they come out with JSA? Expansion. Yes, they had some issues, and I think they had to push the envelope a little bit to kind of make people forget about stuff that's going on. But don't forget, they also lowered prices, right? I was the first person to say right here on this show with my buddy Rohan, if he's watching out there, say hello, buddy, that when all this stuff happened, I said, do you think CGC was going to lower prices? And he said, no. Everyone was saying no. Guess what? That's exactly what happened. They're going to be temporary, don't get me wrong, but maybe now they won't. That PSA is coming. I don't think that CGC didn't know that this was going to happen. They knew that PSA was coming. But again, let's check out the label for a little bit. I wish I could zoom in, but I can't. The one thing somebody pointed out to me that I didn't even notice, this is a Hulk 181, right? Check out in the top right-hand corner, newsstand. There's no 181 newsstand. So I don't know if this was just a mock-up and they threw newsstand in here so people would know, like, that's where we're going to put the notation. Very well possible, but that's not a good sign that you're putting a newsstand for a comic that doesn't have a newsstand, right? So keep that in the back of your head as well. But again, I believe this is just a mock-up so people could see where everything's going to go. Hulk 181, 1974 Marvel Comics. The grade, which I think is too small, it's on the right, where all the other companies, it's on the left. So again, that's where the grade is on their PSA card slab as well. It's on the right. White pages, newsstand, and the serial number. Okay. Herb Trimp, Herb Trimp, John Romita cover. Herb Trimp, Jack Abel art. Len Wein story. First full appearance of Wolverine. Okay. I'm all fine with that. I don't think PSA is going to change a goddamn thing about their label. I think it's going to be this. The problem I see with that, and I don't have a huge deal outside of, appearance a little bit, the grade has to be bigger. That is very small, and I think it's troubling for a lot of graders out there. The biggest thing we had with CBCS, with their old label, was that the numbers were too small and you couldn't see it. I'm happy this is a white background. I do like white backgrounds on comic labels. I myself have the old CBCS labels on two of my biggest books. I actually like the way they look, so I like the white label. Let's make that 9.4 a little bigger and maybe move those white pages, newsstand, and serial number below that in wider font, so maybe you have some more room on top. That's the start. But the biggest thing that is troubling to me, what are they going to do with restored books? Where's the notation going to go? It's not going to be a colored label, I don't believe, which I think may help them out because I hate CGC's purple label, and I hate CGC's green label. Now they're kind of doing away with the green label, right? Now that the whole JSA thing is coming out, a lot of those green label signatures, they're getting verified, turning into gold and black labels. So that helps them out. But the purple labels are not going anywhere. So what is PSA going to do to combat the restored issue on comic books? Are they going to make a big notation that says restored? Are they going to change the label a little bit? I have never seen a carded label by PSA not been the white and red variant that we're seeing now. I've never seen another color, so I don't think they're going to do that, but remains to be seen. That is an issue that I think definitely is going to get a lot of people hurt because they're not going to pay attention, unfortunately, that the book is restored. They're just going to see the label, that it's the same because that's what they're accustomed doing, and they're going to buy the book and they're going to overspend because that's what collectors do sometimes when they're not familiar with things. But I totally get why you guys hate the label. All right, so where were we? The security is not there. On so many books, there are no pictures of the underlying graded book. Easy to do a bait and switch. So I will say this, their card sleeves, their card cases, they're pretty hard to get into. I know, like I said before, that somebody did get busted for swapping out labels, but they're notoriously hard. I myself have tried to get one of these things out, and I could not do it. So without damaging the case. John says, what one will let you walk through step by step? I don't know what you mean by that, buddy. Brooklyn says, Lawrence, I don't think PSA right now has the talent-based depth bench or knowledge from the community to be able to appropriately contribute to comic grading overall. Let's get CGC, CBCS, and PGX right first. It's up to them to get it right. The one thing I will say about CBCS is outside of them losing books, which that's the main thing right now with them, obviously after they changed their label, that didn't help them. Why didn't it help them? Because when CGC was having all the issues that it's still having, they didn't capitalize. I would have put on a full court press, and I don't know why they didn't do it. I got to be honest. You guys know CBCS is owned by Beckett. Beckett should have done the same thing with PSA in the card space, and they didn't do that. I can't answer why. It makes no sense to me. If PSA gets this right, CBCS is done. That's the answer. Okay? They're finished. PSA will take market share from CGC, and whatever people were sending over to CBCS, if the price is right to send it to PSA, they're going to do that. And then on down the line. And it's all a matter of pricing and value. If people are submitting to CBCS and PGX and EGS now, they're doing it knowing that, according to the market, that their books aren't as valuable, and I'm going to use that as a loose term, valuable, according to the market, because they have them slabbed by those companies. What's it going to say about PSA, right? That's the main thing. They have to get the value up. Second thing is, I've said this from the beginning, and that's why I stopped sending books in to be graded, is that it costs too much money to slab a book. I'll talk about cards for a second, because when I sent my Garbage Pails first series in, I wanted to send them to PSA. PSA to send a non-member card in up to a certain value is $18 per card. Now, you might not think that's a lot of money, but CGC is $10 per card. So you're almost cutting the value in half. That's a lot of money to spend. GPK, and I know a lot of people don't grade GPK because most people do sports cards and Pokemon, but there's 82 cards in a series. Do you know how much money that costs? $20 a card for PSA, and that's depending on the value. If I grade a bunch of atom bombs in high grade, the price goes up. So it's just too much money for me to spend. And that's the whole thing with grading for me, is that I'd rather take that money and put it towards something else. That is more economical. But to each his own. Chad says he just Googled pics of PSA mock slab. The back of the label looks better than the front. Okay. Well, that's a good thing, but I wonder if it's the same as the card. I didn't see that, so I wonder if it's the same as the card label, which I'm assuming it is. Robert says, I've got a PSA 8 and 9 Tom Brady rookie, and the 8 looks better if I recall correctly. I see soft corner on the 9. It's just too hard to tell, and that's the problem that I've heard from PSA is they're ultra hard on rarer cards, which I get to an extent because you don't want a lot of those floating around because it diminishes the value, which in turn I understand, but the grade is the grade. That's the problem we have with grading companies, is that the grade should be the grade no matter what the card. If the grade meets the standard for a 10, it's a 10. If the grade meets the standard for a 9, it's a 9, and so on down the line. If you're making up rules to say, oh, this can't be a 10 because we have too many 10s on our census already, that's insane. That's the same shit that's getting CGC in trouble, where I've heard those things as well. We can only grade a certain amount of 9.8s a month or a week or whatever, or we can only have so many 9.8s in this book. I've heard it all. The grade is the grade. And anybody, if they're going to tell you differently, don't use them, because that's a scam, right? And that's why people that say grading is a scam. It's a scam to a certain extent, because you're paying money to have something encapsulated. Why don't I send a comic book to CGC? Just encapsulate the book. Don't give me the grade. How about that? Give me that as a service. $10. I'll pay $10 to send my comic book into you, put a nice Marvel label on it. I got all these Spideys here, my Silver Age Spideys. I don't need you to grade my book. I'll give it my own grade when I sell it. Just give me that nice label that says Amazing Spider-Man 50, first appearance of the Kingpin, classic cover by John Romita, so on down the line. Trifecta, put it on there. You could put Mighty Comics and Collectibles Trifecta book. That's what I want. Don't even give me the grade. You know how much I'd pay for that service? I'd pay for it a lot more than your grade, because your grade means nothing, right? It's subjective. So it's just because it's you say it, but I could say it's something else. Joe Schmo could say it's something else. CBCS could say it's something else. PSA could say it's something else. That's what the issue is. So if anybody starts this PSA, CGC, grade comics in a slab without a grade. Slab comics in a slab without grading it. I'd be up for that service if it's cheap. All right, what was I saying? Chad says, I would say the outer white edge outline is thicker at the bottom. That can only be the reason it was an 8 over her grade. Yeah, I could see it's a little bit off-centered. She's talking about the atom bomb. It's a little bit off-centered. I get that. But outside of that, shouldn't that be a 9 then? I don't know. I'm not a PSA card expert. I just wanted the card because I like it. Garbage Book Kids. So that's what matters to me. People, like I said before, they're paying for value. Mark Spector comments, what's going on, brother? I can almost guarantee you that PSA will come in at a lower entry point cost-wise against CGC because they have the wider reach they can afford to do. I agree. But the people who are familiar with PSA, do they collect comics? I know there are certain people do, absolutely. But I got to say, like, my kids collect cards, football cards, basketball cards. My youngest collects comics a little bit, but I think a lot of collectors I meet, they don't collect comics, the card guys. Some of them do, absolutely, because they're collectors. But not a lot. I don't think the majority do. So are they going to be familiar right off the bat with PSA? I don't know. It remains to be seen. Lawrence, the last time Hulk won anyone night before was Justice Alive for 9,900 with with BP. So 10 grand. So again, if it's sold, a CGC sold for 9,900, let's say the same 9.4 sells for 9,000 PSA. Would you do it? I wouldn't. Unless you just want to own the book, then why not just buy a raw copy? Because you're afraid about the grade. You're afraid you're going to miss something. You're afraid that the value isn't there for what you paid for it, because you want equity in your comic books. So the people out there who are sending books in, don't tell me you just want to own the book when you're buying slabs or you're sending books into CGC or wherever you send them in. It's because you want equity in your comic books, or maybe you want peace of mind. But I'm telling you right now, you send your books to get graded, you're still not having peace of mind. How many books has CGC missed with stuff that was in them that they missed? Marvel stamps cut out. How many people resubmit books and get lower grades after they've cleaned and pressed books? Makes no sense. Makes zero sense. I think PSA should stick with its specialty, which is cards, and CGC stick to comics. Listen, I think it's a good thing. If you, as a collector, want a choice, right now we have 4 choices, and I'll include EGS in that. We're going to get 5. And then one of them is going to go out. I can tell you that right now. All 3 may go out. If PSA is successful, all 3 may go out. I don't think CGC is going anywhere. I can tell you that right now. Unless they get sued into oblivion on something they got caught doing, they're not going anywhere. Can PSA pull it off and take market share? They're going to take something, absolutely, because people are going to try it out. First comes first. But what I see PSA as right off the bat is modern books. I don't see people sending AF-15s to PSA. off the bat. There's no way. I don't see it. I don't see it. Off the bat, what are they offering that CGC is not offering? Nothing. Maybe security in the case. We have to see what the case looks like. That's the main thing. If they could do that and they could give me accurate grading on every comment that's submitted, 99%, I give you 1% leeway, then we could talk. But again, it remains to be seen. I'm rooting for them, though. I really am. There's just too much money to be made, especially since they acquired eBay's vault back in March. Now they can really provide that whole service to you without having to pay shipping. So if you guys don't know what he's talking about, is PSA can just grade your stuff and then list it right on you for eBay. So you don't have to ever get that stuff sent back to you. They do the selling for you. It's a nice, easy way of you making more money, saving money, having them do all the work. So yes, there is value there. Are they going to do that with comics right off the bat? I don't think. Eventually, yes. I do think they're going to do that because that is a big win for them. But that's how many people go slab a book then automatically sell it on eBay, right? Maybe dealers do that. I don't think the average collector does that as much as cards. There are so many cards out there that they keep coming out with cards that are worth a ton of money. Comics are not like that. The moderns that come out, how many are worth a ton of money? None. Zero. We could talk about Ultimate 4, the variant. That's the most expensive modern there ever was. And that's come down like what, 85% off the high or whatever the frick it was. You have Edge of Spider-Verse 2, which has come down, and the regular Ultimate Fallout number 4, they've come down. So are you sending it in to be slabbed at this point with all the ones out there? No. So I don't think that benefits them to do that. Collectors. What's up, Desired? How you doing, Nigel? What's going on, brother? So Jose says he likes the frosted edges with the comics. To me, I don't. I think it looks cheap. I want to be able to be translucent. And I wish I could break out a slab for you guys and show you, but I'm sure most of you guys have slabs at home. You could check it out. If that was translucent and it wasn't frosted, I think it would look a lot better. It looks old. Frosted to me looks old. It reminds me of like 1970s window panels. I don't know. It doesn't look that bad on a PSA card because the surface area is smaller. Imagine that on a giant comic. I think it would look ridiculous. But again, remains to be seen. We don't have a true slab from them yet. I'm just bringing forth things that I see that could potentially turn off collectors or turn them on. Not in the way you're thinking. Thank you, Brandon, brother. I appreciate that. He likes the new intro. Robert Davis says he has a conspiracy theory regarding 10s. Let's hear it. CGC is owned by Blackstone, and they are part of a club of mucky mucks. Perhaps the majority of 9.9s and 10s are given to certain submitters. Look at Vincent Zurzullo. He just submitted a ton of Wolverine 1s. It is a huge art dealer and also rich as fuck. You think he can pull strings? I guarantee you that's what it is. He got the Wolverine 110. He got the 9.9 Giant Size X-Men 1. Anybody who doesn't think that the big wigs get better grades, even some of the dealers on IG, the bigger guys or the guys that set up at shows, I think some of them get better deals. And I'm just being honest with you guys. I get it to a certain extent because they submit a lot of books. So CGC wants to keep them happy. That's your job as a business. Coming to me from a business owner, or at least someone who runs a business, is that you want to keep your customers happy. Am I right? So I get it. Is it right? No, it's not right because you're throwing other collectors under the bus. But is that going to stop it? No. What's going to stop it? Nothing. You're going to stop sending your books in to be slabbed? Do you think that bothers them? No, because the guys who have all the books and the money keep sending books in to be slabbed. So why do they care if they lose me or you? Right? They don't care. There he is. I mentioned you earlier, my friend. That's Rohan from Absolute Game of Nerds. Check their channel out. Robert says he's got to bounce. He was supposed to jump on, but I've rambled a long time, so I'm sorry, buddy. Next time, definitely, man. Oh, here he is. Here's an oldie but a goodie. What is going on, Omega Collects? Where have you been? You need to jump on the channel at some point. Oh, we have another guy who broke the news with I don't want to say with me, but he put out a post and I immediately put out another one. What's going on? 9.9 Newsstand. He is the news source for everyone out there in comics. If you guys are not following him on Instagram, YouTube, you guys are definitely missing out. fantastic, fantastic source for all things comics and collectibles, not just comics. He does cards and does a lot of other art stuff too. So follow him. So John says he's new to what era is a silver. So 1960s to I think 1971 is silver age. Uh, Gold is pre 19, I think 1960 and back. I could be wrong on the exact dates, but you get the gist. Bronze is like 71 and higher, I think. And then I think the copper age starts in like, what is it? Early 80s. I don't have the exact date, but you could Google it and find out real easy. There's a lot I want to say that I can't say yet, but I'm loving the conversation. Why can't you say it? Do you want to jump on here, brother? If you're still here and you want to jump on, let me know. I will send you the link. You let me know. 100%. Always a risk. Absolutely. He had my CBCS 3.0 Daredevil 1 clean to press. It's coming back with a CGC conserve label. That happens. That's why I'm also skeptical. If you guys don't know, I have an AF-15 signed by Stan Lee. It's a witness signature, yellow label, but it's got right where Stein signed it. Underneath it, he signed over who's somebody penciled in their name. So you can't see it too much, but you still can see it. I was thinking of actually cracking that out, getting someone to, or, erase it because it's in pencil and then submitting for JSA. But doing that is exactly why I've not done it yet, because I'm scared that will happen and I just can't take that risk. I have a feeling, Chad, and he says they can use AI in the process, like counterfeiting. That's already going on. I think that there's got to be some type of AI got to be happening with CGC, possibly with some of these other grading companies. I have no proof of that, but something has to be going on. 100%. Tim says the PSA label is ugly. I mean, it's a thing where either you like it or you don't. It's very minimalistic. When I started collecting cards as well, I wasn't a fan of it, but it grew on me. It grew on me because if you have one card, you may look at it and be like, you know what? That's kind of very, what's the word I'm looking for? What were those old foods back in the day? They were called something. I forgot. And they were given a specific name, like, not G. I'm thinking GFO. That ain't it. It's a specific name, like they were very generic. And I forgot the name they used to call them. That's what it reminded me of. But the more cards you have, the better they look together. And it's a weird feeling. So I'm trying to picture aligning a bunch of these on my wall in a PSA graded slab. And how would they look? And I'm trying to think to myself, I don't think they would look that bad. Compared to some of the other ones out there, I don't like having CBCS mixed in with CGC. I could tell you that. I think they look weird together. If you have all one thing, I think they look good. If they're all mishmashed, I think they look a little weird. So I like being uniform, but that's just my, particularness. If that's a word, I don't even know if it is. So Coyote says the copyrights began in 1984. Khalid, I think the graders grade books depending on their mood. I mean, if the grade is 100% right, why people crack their slabs and resubmit the book and get a different grade. That's why I can't do it, right? I don't slab modern books because I don't see the value in doing that. I do buy some modern books from here to time to read or because I like covers. I'm into art, so I like that stuff. But why would you submit a book for regrade? Obviously, because it could benefit from a press and clean. That's the obvious reason. But the money that it costs to do that is just astronomical to me. I don't see the value unless you really think you have a great shot. If you were to clean and press a book that the book really had a shot to bump and didn't bump, or the grade came back less, that is like the ultimate punch in the nuts. Because that means something was wrong. Something was wrong with the person who originally graded the book. Right? Either that or the standards have changed since the last time that book was graded. And that's even worse. That's what everybody seems to miss, that the standards for books keep changing and the standards for books for different submitters change, which is awful. I know he says, I'm here, but he can't jump on. He multitasking. I was at PSA recently and handled the prototype slabs and labels and some other stuff, but I'll be able to speak on it after San Diego Comic-Con. Can you at least tell me, bud, did you like it or not like it? Or maybe you can't even say that. Positive, or you could say positive, negative, or both. I don't want to get you in trouble. Regardless, I got to get you out the channel on some time because you are like breaking news aficionado. It's got to happen. But regardless, like I said, if you could answer that question, it'd be great for everyone out there in the chat. If you can't, I totally understand. But again, I've given you my thoughts on the label. I've given my thoughts on the case, on why it's important that they enter the space, because they are a trusted source in cards, right? You don't get to be number one without some level of trust. CGC at some point was very trusted in the hobby. And then you hear and then hear something else, and then hear something else, and it just kind of snowballs into something else. And that's where the issue becomes, and you let other people into the space. We all know what happened with PGX back in the day with them grading books higher for their own personal standards. It's the same thing happens with CGC with some of these other people. They're grading books higher for certain people. It's the same thing, whether it's for them or for somebody else. I hate to say that I think it's part of this hobby and it's never going to go anywhere. If there's an opportunity for anyone to steal money, there's just shitty people out there and they're going to do it. And I don't think it's ever going to change. Maybe they'll hide it better. Maybe they'll make it go away. I don't know. So he says, personally, I like it, but had feedback, and feedback is being acted on in the next several months before the services go live next year. So that is positive for me. If he likes it, that is positive for me because I know he's ultra particular like I am. So Manu, thank you very much for answering that question. So that's a good thing. Again, we don't know anything, and I'll make that clear. I've said it earlier today. We don't know anything until we see the service, until we see the product in our hand. And that's why I said to you guys when I started this whole video off is I plan to send something in because I want to see the process. I want to see what it looks like. I want to see how it comes back at. But maybe I take that book that has that spine roll that I know has a spine roll and see how they handle it. That's, I think, something that we should try, right? Someone's got to send in something that may make it hard for them to do the right thing. And if they come back and they do the right thing on the hardest thing possible, that is something that's going to tell us something, right? Let them case that book and fix it and fit it in there the way it should be put and have no issues. That will get me talking. And I think it'll get a lot of collectors talking. Let the value be there after the fact as well. And this is going to take a long time, right? The value is not built overnight. Value is built over time. So how long has CGC been around? I think 2000. I submitted to them like long years ago. So they got to be around a minimum of 24 years. So in the beginning, they were very valued. A lot of people liked the service. Not that there weren't issues back then, but granted, the internet has become something else. You know, social media has become something else. You can't hide from this stuff anymore. You cannot hide from it. So we'll find out the issues and we'll go from there. That's what we do. And I'm sure Manu will find most of them. What makes me happiest about all this, bringing competition to grading, real competition, brand competition, 100%. And like I said before, PSA has a reputation already. They're not entering the market as a new grader like EGS. PGX was there a long time, but because of the issue that they had, you know, people stopped sending books to them. PSA is coming in with a good reputation. Granted, they have their own issues, but their reputation is there. So let's see it carry over to comics and let them adjust to all things comics and let's see where it goes. But competition is always good. Do you think PSA Slab is going to lower CGC prices? No, I don't. Oh, you mean like submission prices? Yes. I think if PSA undercuts CGC, and I think we all believe they will, because why the hell would you come at this and being over the competition or equal to the competition? It makes no sense. You want to get their business, so let's undercut them a little bit. 100%. They're going to be under CGC. Will CGC counteroffer and say, yes, let's be equal to them? I don't think CGC is going to drop prices across the board. No. They're going to make PSA prove themselves first before they do that. Now, with that said, you saw them give a promotion for the month of July with regarding certain books under $400 that if you send 20 in, which is ridiculous because I don't have 20 bucks I'm going to send in, that they'll grade them at a discount. They may throw something like that out to say, hey, you know, we'll give you this deal for this amount of time until PSA proves himself. But if they don't, then why would they do that? Unless they fuck up again. I hope this doesn't make the market more confusing of PSA entering the arena. Chad, let me ask you a question. What's confusing about the market now? Because I'm always here for you guys. If you have questions on IG or email, I always answer a ton of questions. And if you guys are not following me on IG, I just started a broadcast channel that I start broadcasting tips that I have or books that I see that may be good deals. I might point out something that is more special about a certain copy of a book that you may see another copy for sale, stuff like that. So enter the broadcast channel if you can, because I think it'll help you guys. But let me know what's confusing because maybe it can help you. Metal Bum says any competition is good, being the price is down and more options for us. And that is 100% it. Prices going down on grading of comics is benefits all collectors. Excuse me. I just told you guys the majority of the reason I don't submit books anymore is because it's too expensive. I told you the reason why I don't submit my PSA for cards is because they're too expensive for me. And I sent stuff to CGC, which is, what's funny is CGC has almost the exact same label as PSA for the cards, except it's black. A little bit different here and there, but same black border instead of red border. So they all take stuff from each other and apply it into their own thing. And I think that's what PSA is going to do. CGC has a monopoly for years, and hopefully this turns out to be a good thing. It has a monopoly because of the value that their comics hold. If CBCS commanded at the same prices that CGC would, I think a lot of people would send into them. Now, you could complain like I did that I didn't like their label. Now that's fixed. I like their new labels. Whether you do or you don't, that's your opinion. But why would I send a book in that would be worth less money to a company where I could send it to another company where the value would be higher? Again, I don't care about the grade of the book. You guys know that. Most of the shit I buy is low grade anyway. But I think a lot of collectors, they're not focused on the number. They're focused on the value, not that number. So again, it has a monopoly because the value's there. When that changes, CGC will fall. I'm also taking all the feedback that I and my content gets, and taking that directly to PSA. It's going to be up to them to do things, but our voices and I think he building. So you guys here, if you guys are following Manu on IG, send him a DM. And I don't mean to flood your DMs, Manu, but this is a good thing because if you guys want something, if you want something that CGC or CBCS or any of these other companies are not giving you, let him know. Let him pass the information on to them, because if they do it, that's only a benefit to us, right? We want the perfect grading company. We want the nice looking slab. We want the nice looking label. We want the correct grades all the time. We want, what's the word I'm looking for? Everything's flat. I'm losing my mind tonight, but we want consistency. That's the word. We want consistency. We want never to be defrauded. So if we can get that with someone who already has a pretty good reputation, again, they're not perfect. They're not perfect. That's a win with good pricing. I'll add that into it. The only thing I like about PSA is that its slab has a good quality with cards and looks strong, not shaking. I got to tell you, I've never had a PSA card. I've had a bunch of them in my collection. The cards never move. I never had an issue with damage. I know some people probably have, but I never had. Never had an issue buying a PSA slab or getting something slabbed that there was damage on a slab. So that's just me. Maybe other people have, but that's a good thing. I've had cases damaged by CGC. I've had them take forever. PSA at one point took forever. So it's just part of the hobby. I think, back in 2020, 2021, when you set a submission and forget it, it was like a year. PSA, they had to stop submissions. If you guys remember, they stopped it for a while, let themselves catch up, which I think was the right thing to do, because what did CGC do? They just kept taking books after taking books and let you just shit pile up. PSA did the right thing. They stopped taking submissions until they got caught up and they opened them back up again. That is the right thing to do. That's what you want from a company to say, we're overwhelmed right now. Let's stop it for a bit. We'll come back to it. And then, we'll start grading stuff again. That's what you want. Correct, man. Definitely. Like I said, make sure you're messaging him if you guys are interested in getting your stuff slabbed by PSA for the things you want. So Manu, right off the bat, you could tell them that I don't like the frosting and give me the option to slabbing a book without having it graded. Nobody's offering that. CBCS will grade your book raw, but give me the option of not grading the book. I just want it slabbed and make it cheap. I think a lot of people would do that. I'm telling I'm maybe I'm a minority. You guys tell me out there in the chat, would you, and if you're watching this, make a comment afterwards. Would you slab a book without a grade? Maybe I'm the only idiot out there who would do that, but I would. If you like slabs and you don't care about the grade, make a cheaper option. Other than that, I don't mind the label. It's actually, the only thing I would add is make the 9.4 bigger. I don't care that it's on the right as opposed to the left. Make the 9.4 bigger, move that down, make the font bigger, 100%. I know that I have a problem with the font on the PSA cards too. I also think it needs to be thickened up a bit. So that's it, in my opinion. And the frosting we know about. But if that case is secure, they already have a one up on CGC. CBCS's case, you're not getting into either. But why haven't they capitalized? Because the value's not there. That's the biggest issue. They have to get value out of this. If they don't get value out of this by doing this, if that Hulk 9.4 doesn't sell for that 9,900 that the CGC one sent for, it doesn't matter. The game is over. The game is over. Pack it up. You could be number 2 still. That makes you happy. Maybe that does. Maybe PSA doesn't want to be number 1. Maybe you're going to get books returned saying doesn't fit in a slab. Maybe they just want to expand and get money. I have no idea. I'm not on the inside. I don't have answers. I could just tell you it is good for the hobby if they get this right. It's going to be very good. If they don't, status quo. Well, I just got a great question. Before I do that, Chef, what's going on, brother? How are you? No, he's not working for PSA, but he's a voice in our hobby that they're going to listen to, just like CGC listened to him. And that's the good thing about having a voice, especially someone that's on our side, like Manu is. That's the good thing about having a voice because they will listen to him. Nobody at CGC is listening to me, even though they should. I was the one calling his shit years ago. Nobody's paying attention, but that's just fine. I'm not here for them. Will this draw card collectors into the hobby? This is a great question because the one thing about card collectors is this, whether you're a sports cards collector or a Pokemon collector or Garbage Pail Kids collector like me, sports collecting is a totally different animal than comics. Comics are about nostalgia, I think, for the most part. Sometimes it's about art. Sometimes it's about story. But for the most part, I think it's about nostalgia. Sports sometimes is about nostalgia. But how many cards that are coming out now, and I said this before, that are worth a ton of money now, that are just being released now? Comics aren't like that. That's the difference between cards and comics. So I think that's the difference where I think card collectors are looking for that payday. There's some card collectors who are looking for rarity. And those are probably collectors that I would, get along great with. But if you're just looking to make a buck on the newer cards that come out, you're sending them to PSA and they're coming back 10s already. I mean, that's a different animal. Like that's what you're not going to get that with comics. It's not happening. What's your thoughts on CBCS? I personally like their slabs better, but I understand the value is not the same. I said it. I mean, I like their slabs too, and I like their labels. I have no problem with CBCS. They actually, if you guys saw me cover it months ago, they damaged somebody's book that the guy had re-slabbed, and they made him whole. They gave him money because they damaged the book. They made him whole. So it wasn't like they gave him a credit. They made him whole. That's number one, which is a good sign. The other one is the Tram thing where somebody stole his book. They got it back for him. Still their fault for losing the book. Somebody stole it, but at the end of the day, it worked out. I haven't heard of a story yet, and if you have, please let me know, of a story not working out. How many CGC stories have we heard that have not worked out? That's the issue. Whether you like CBCS or not, I think the intent is there to do good. I think the grading for the most part is pretty good. The only grading issue I have with CBCS is their 1.0 grades for books that should be 0.5s. If half of the cover is torn off, there's no way that book is a 1.0. Sorry. No way. It's a 0.5. That's the only disagreement I have with grades. Other than that, grading, I think they've been pretty good. Sometimes I think they're a lot harsher than CGC, but a lot of times I think they fall in line with how I grade books. But again, it comes down to value. So Manu says he's working with, not for. If Overstreet started grading and slabbing, in my opinion, would be game over for CGC. I don't think that's their game. I don't think it'll never be their game. I don't think it'll ever be that game. That's not English. And I may be the minority here, but Overstreet brings a lot of great insight to the comic book hobby if you read. But let's be honest, you're never going to use Overstreet to price a comic book in the market, right or wrong. They're not even close to being accurate. So again, a lot of great articles, a lot of great insight. There's a lot of great material in there, but I think that price data obviously is nowhere close to where it needs to be. But again, if you like hearing about the hobby and trends and stuff like that, I think there's a lot of great writers for Overstreet. And I'm going to get killed for saying that, but I'm honest. It'd be nice if the comic guru for PSA came on a show like this and had an open discussion. Take the ideas directly from collectors, good and the bad. So Manu, I'm going to point this to you because is there a chance that we can get whoever's running PSA Comics to come on your show? I would love them to come on my show. Hell, I would love them to come on your show and then me be on your show because I'm sure all of us would have questions for them to take notes, to give insight. I think that's a great idea, Jose. He says, Khalid says, and now I want to own a Vengeance of Bane at a 9.8, but I'm a bit hesitating about it because I think of all the 9.8s coming in 9.8s. I think anything modern, anything copper or modern, you're going to have that issue because we don't know what's out there. Somebody just posted today, I saw they found a bunch of those first appearance of Gambits, a box of them, a box. So you don't know what's going to turn up. So that makes me think, yeah, I'd be hesitating of it, but I don't know what the price of something like that is, so I can't answer that. But if you want to own the book, buy the book. Don't worry about the grade, buy the book. That's my answer to you. Do you think PSA's comic-specific grading will be similar to CGC Overstreet or with some slight differences? They've noted in the release that went out today that they're going to use the standard comic grading. But with that said, like when I say that, 0.5, 1, 9.2, 9.4, regular stuff that we always see. But with that said, every comic book company is different. We get different grades from CGC. We get different grades from CBCS. We get different grades from PGX. So grading is subjective. That's what they say. I want consistency. I want to submit a book to CGC, take the same book, crack it out, submit it to PSA and get the same grade. That's what I want. If that could become an industry standard, I think we're all better off, but that's never going to happen. But I do think that if you submit a 9.4 Hulk 181 to PSA and it looks like a 9.4, I don't think there's an issue. If you could submit a 2.5 Amazing Fantasy 15 to PSA and it looks like a 2.5, I don't have an issue. If I submit an Amazing Spider-Man 1 and it looks like a 3.0 and they give it a 5.0, I have an issue. That's what it comes down to. I think, how do I say this? I think that the people who are grading books need to be properly trained. And if they are properly trained, CGC says that they let 3 people grade each book that comes through their floor. I don't think that's even close to being possible. So I don't know what the standards are for PSA yet. No one does. We don't know the standards. They haven't put that out. But it'll become apparent over time. And it's a waiting game. The appearance of the slab and the security of the slab and the appearance of the label are they going to be the first things out of the gate. And if you're okay with what they're giving you out of the gate, you submit more and you see if the grades are right. If the grades look right, you should be good. As more comics go into grading, the more we're going to see. If we get years down the line without people complaining too much, I think we have a winner. But with that said, as I've stated multiple times in this video, if I can get 9,900 for a CGC and get 8,500 for a PSA, it does not matter. They're going to, I don't want to say they're going to fail. They're not going to be number one. They'll capture some market share at the expense of some of the other grading companies like CBCS, PGX, and EGS. Maybe a little bit from CGC when people get annoyed. PSA offers an authentic option, no grade on cards. Maybe they do the same on comics. I don't need to know that a book is authentic though, Rohan. I need to know that I just want to have it slabbed. So let me ask you this: will PSA just slab a card without grading it, or they just want to know that it's authentic? If they'll slab it, I'm all for that. I don't know because I've never done a submission where I haven't had something graded. So if that's the case, I'm all for that. Sign me up. Slab my book, don't grade it, and give me my own special label. So Horvath said he'd wait on modern 9.8s. What is PSA, George says? So PSA and still is a card slabbing and grading service. They are the #1 card and slab grading service for cards. They do a majority of cards, most cards, not everything, but they do most cards, including Garbage Pail Kids. They're #1. When they came out, they were not #1. Beckett was #1, and they've taken over that field over the past 5 to 7 years. So now they're jumping into comics, and they do have a good reputation for the most part. So people are speculating that they're going to take away market share from CGC and other comic book graders, and I think it remains to be seen. But we all agree that it is good for the hobby to have someone else come into this field who has a good reputation. Larger grade is feedback I've gotten a few times. Noted, because case security is strong. I haven't tried to break in yet, but I'll try as soon as I get the chance. Yeah. I like I said, I've tried to get into PSA card slabs, and they're really hard without cracking the slab. So I trust them when it comes to security, but I do think you're going to get some design backlash. But because you want the security, I think you're going to have to deal with some of the design backlash, unfortunately. And that's the price you're going to pay. That's just my opinion. We'll see when it comes out, though. Like I said, if they can get rid of that frosted, or maybe just keep the frosted around the outer ring. You guys can't see this on my screen, but just around the outer ring, the inner ring could be clear. I think you're set then. I think that'd be great. Greenland's Narn grade slabs are especially for magazines, D&D modules, etc. Casing only option would be nice. I think it would be great because I think a lot of people just like having their books slabbed instead of keeping them raw for protection, stuff like that. And they could make that a cheap service, man. I think they would clean up because they're the only people offering that. Nobody else offers just slabbing without grading. This is a great point. CGC is not listening to anybody. They do whatever they want. And I agree with that. And that's the problem. And they like to make it seem like they're listening to you, but they're not. This will grab carp collectors that have loyalty to PSA. They will grade books and buy comic collections now simply because it's a PSA service now. So there you go. He knows better than me. My thing to do, I'm going to ask you this. I think a majority of collectors, let's not say majority, let's say half the collectors, because I'm confident in that. Half the collectors collect because of nostalgia, not because of grade. So do you think that would adversely affect some of those people who grade just because they're into the nostalgia fact, and the PSA guys who are coming in now are not into the nostalgia? They're buying for grade and money and stuff like that. Do you think that will affect the hobby? I'll ask you this. Let me know what you think. Horvath, we came together and made it something no one could ignore. It was so great how loud we became together. He's right. Well, here's a good point. Getting some of the best comics in the hobby into PSA slabs would be key for their success in the comic market. That doesn't always work, though, because if you guys noticed, CBCS got a Batman 1, a couple of Batman 1s. They got a Marvel Comics #1 that sold for way under CGC value. So, no, that is not always the case. Will it help? If it sells for the right amount, it's going to help. If it doesn't, then no, it's only going to hurt it. And that's the big thing. If you have a big book that sells for less in a PSA slab, that's probably the last thing that they want right now. They want to get a couple modern 9/8s to start, maybe some Bronze Age keys that sell high grades that sell for good prices, that even copper. That's what they want, because if they get a big book that sells for stupid money, like way under CGC value, they're finished. It's over. That's what just killed CBCS. They put out that label. If you guys don't know, I hate to toot my own horn. I'm the one who broke the CBCS label change at New York Comic Con this year. I showed it in a video. People ran with it. When that Marvel Comics 1 went to auction on Heritage and it got freaking demolished, it was over right then and there. Forget about all the CGC missteps. Forget about them not capitalizing. If that book had sold for equal or more, they'd be set. They'd be in good spot. Same with the Batman they had. I think they had a Batman 1.0 or 1.8. Forget what it was. It sold for so much less than the previous CGC version. It really killed them. So if PSA doesn't get off started well with sales on a big book that comes out, that's going to kill them. So the smaller books start first, get a couple of good sales, and work your way up. Again, you can't control what comes into the market, what comes into your office to get graded. Hopefully it sells for a good price. Tiker says this will be the third best option behind CGC and CBCS. Will never be the market leader, and I'm sure that's okay for them. They just want a piece of the market. It's the same as CGC and the card market. I thought about this before. I mean, what made CGC enter the card market? They're way down the list at this point. It's just to get more money coming in the door. I don't think their card market is huge, but I will say this: if you go to like a big con, like I went to New York Comic Con this past year, their card presence was huge there, almost as big as the comic book portion of CGC. So they had a lot of people going there dropping off cards. I also think that they're a little bit less harsh on cards than PSA is, but a lot of people who are staunch card collectors are only using PSA because the value is there. This works the same way, guys. If you want value in your collectibles, you're going to go to the number one option. If PSA can be just as reliable price-wise, sale-wise as CGC, they're going to take market share. If they're not, then they're not. You're right. It's what it is. Khalid says, quick question outside of your topic. You think ASM 14 2.0 grade is a good long-term investment book? It actually presents good and the colors are not bad. I did a couple of videos months and months back about the only books I considered investments. ASM books weren't on it except for AF15 and ASM 1. Maybe and a couple of other keys, which are bigger keys, but own the book just to own the book. I think if you hold the book for 20 years, it's going to go up in value. That's my answer. Whether it's due to inflation or other factors, the book will always go up in value. If you try to sell the book at 5 years, are you going to make money? It's a fucking coin flip. So am I buying a book on that notion? No. I buy ASM 14 because I'm a huge Spidey fan and I want to own the book. Lawrence, I disagree with you on Overstreet. It's extremely important, critical for the community. While pricing may seem off, it's all subjective to the current market. It's an important read. As I said, there is a lot of value to be had reading it. I'm not saying there isn't. That's not was my point. Can you collect comics without Overstreet? 100%. There's no question in my mind you can. That's the point I'm trying to make. To the old-time collector who was around when Overstreet started and continue to be around even when they got bought out, there's value there. There's a lot of great information that can come, especially trends for the upcoming years. But you don't need to be an Overstreet reader to collect comics and price comics. Here's a great question for you, Manu. Do PSA slabs have ultraviolet light protection? That's something I don't think we haven't gotten from any of the grading companies yet. That's an important one. So that's something you may want to mention to them when you do sit down with them, is that can you provide ultraviolet light protection? Because that's something that could be, something that can boost their service. He says there definitely will be a divide between collectors and flipper. The sports card quick flip attitude can and will rub some people the wrong way, but no different from the modern. Exactly. I agree with that 100%. There's people in the hobby now who do that. But I think the collectors that are going to come in from PSA, that they're staunch PSA collectors, are they going to be buying moderns? Or are they going to be buying bigger books? I would think they were going to be buying the big stuff, but I don't know. That, again, that remains to be seen. But I will say this, if it does drive collectors into the hobby, that only helps drive prices higher. It doesn't when more collectors into the hobby, prices go higher. They don't dip. So that's the problem we're having now in the past 2 years, that all the collectors that have left the hobby have caused the prices to dip, and they've gotten crushed, a lot of those books, because whether you're a collector who lost a lot of money that says, "I'm done with this," or you made your profit and you headed out the door and books started to decrease in price, everybody's undercutting everybody right now, and it just keeps driving prices higher. We're starting to see a little bit of stabilization now, and it's book sales for higher, then it's lower, then it's higher. That's what you want. You want a little bit of a flattening and a little basing before we head higher again, and it's going to be a nice slow grind higher for the next 20 years with some fluctuation. Don't expect anything other than that. If you hear anyone say this book is going to go nuts, don't. It may go nuts prior and then go right back down, but that's it. Timing is everything in this market when it comes to money. Yeah, I don't think CGC has any UV protection whatsoever. So again, that's it. That could be a big deal if they could throw that in there, because you know some people do ask about that a lot. I keep my room nice and dark here, so I don't worry about it too much. But that is a big deal for a lot of collectors. Uh, they will buy what Comic Tom tells them to. Charlie D, what's going on? Another Mighty Militia member. What's going on, brother? How are you? Great option for sports magazines to match my cards. That is the option we didn't talk about here tonight. How many sports magazines that you see right now graded by CGC? Do they grade sports magazines? They grade other magazines. I'm assuming they do. I don't ever see any graded by CGC. That is a big deal. Great, great thought process, Charlie D. That's something we don't hear about a lot. I know Beckett offered magazine slabbing, so we may see a lot of those be converted into PSA as well. So that could be an option for a lot of collectors as well. Great point there, Charlie. Well, let me ask you guys this, and he just says it. CGC needs to get their act together. Let me ask you guys this: do you think CGC cares? Do you think this affects them at all? And I want to hear from you guys in the chat. And I'm going to end this stream pretty soon. We have it like at 8 minutes, and I've been on an hour and a half at that point. Do you think CGC is affected at all, knowing that PSA is coming, that another one is coming into their space? The problem is that CBCS entered the space from the ground up. PGX was in the space a long time ago from the ground up when CGC was around. Same with EGS, more of a newer company if you use them. But this is an established company transitioning to the space now. This is not, I guess we could consider Beckett transitioning to the space. So I guess it's the same, but I guess it's a similar comparison, because when Beckett started CBCS, they might have been the top dog in the card space. I don't know the timing of that. So if that was the case, did entering the comic market help them or hurt them? And is the same going to happen to PSA? If when entering the comic market, is that going to hurt their card grading? I'm going to say no, but it's a question to be had considering it happened to Beckett. I'm going to say no. I just think that the PSA card product is a better product than Beckett's product. And that's the answer. Will that be the same for PSA and CGC? Will PSA put out a better product? When I look at a CGC slab, it looks nice. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a very nice presenting slab. The slab itself has security issues. We all know that. It has issues with the inner wall moving around. We know that. PSA, I don't think that the book is not going anywhere in the slab. From what I've seen, it's not moving. My only thought process is when there is deformity in a book, how are they going to handle that? That's my only process, my thought process on that, outside of appearance. And obviously now the UV light thing brings to light. That's it. That's a great point. So PSA was born in 1991 before CGC, but PSA didn't become a market leader until about 5 to 7 years ago in the card industry. CGC was the only game in town when they started. PSA wasn't. They became number one, which, be honest with you, is a good sign for PSA. Can they be number one in comics now too? CGC Slab is pretty, but it's basically a Ziploc bag. We cannot disagree with that. We've seen it, right? But it is nice to look at. But again, I'm a a raw collector for the most part, so I might be the greatest person to ask. But I want PSA to be everything. Be the guy that gets the grade right. Be the guy with a nice label. Doesn't have to be perfect. Be the guy with security for their slab. Be the guy that the slab looks pretty good, right? And the only gripe I have about what I've seen in the one photo that we've seen is the frosting. Other than that, I'm happy with the way it looks. I just think when it gets to be that size of a comic, it becomes deterrent the way it looks. If they can get rid of the frosting, I'd be all for this thing. As long as the price is right for submission, the sales prices are right. They're on par with CGC, and that's it. I think we're good. If they can pull that off, I do believe they will take market share. If they can't, and the big issue, I've said it a number of times, if they sell a book and it's significantly undervalued than what CGC values the book at, or what those books sell for, graded by CGC, then it's not going to work, right? But Manu brought up a pretty interesting point that if the PSA collector jumps into the space and only buys PSA or only submits to PSA, all of a sudden you're going to have an influx of PSA books that hit the market. Now, if you have an influx of PSA books that hit the market that are only being sold between PSA collectors, does that drive prices up because those slabs are limited for now? It's a very interesting thought process, but it's something that we need to wait and see what happens. You need to decide for yourself what's important to you. The grade, the appearance, the UV protection, if there is some, all of the above, the security. I want all of the above. I want everything. Why settle for one thing? You need to be the one company out there that's going to give us everything that we want. If you do that, you're going to be successful. If you don't, you're going to fall along the lines of all the other comic grading companies that are out there right now. I mean, CGC can't get out of their own way, and they're still number one. They're still making money. People are still sending stuff to them. Why? That's the only reason, is because their books sell for the most money. Exactly. PSA bros, save us. I don't hate the grade. I just, the way it looks, the frosting. On a card, it doesn't look that bad. Hold on a second. I have this. Let me see if I can, there you go. Here's an up close look at a PSA slab on a card. And many of you guys have these in your own collection. You could see the frosting there. Okay. Imagine this blown up to the size of a comic book. This is 4 inches by 3 inches, roughly. It doesn't look that bad on a small card like this, but look how thin the edges are on the side of the card. They're very thin, so that it's hard to notice. Now I'm going to put, and I should have done this ahead of time, I'm going to put this on the screen, and look how thick the edges are around the comic book. That is a big difference, right? If there's not going to be an inner well, a clear inner well, which obviously on the card, there's no inner well because it holds the card nice and snug in there. They're going to do the same thing with the comic. That's my assumption. It looks clunky. It looks weird. It looks like it belongs in the 1980s. And I love the 1980s. Don't get me wrong, but you guys saw this picture, and I'm going to hold this up one more time. Here, let me hold it like this. Again, look at the top around the label. The frosting, it's hard to tell, but it's there on a card. Again, there's probably 9 cards stacked side by side for a comic book. So the amount of frosting that's there is definitely going to be a deterrent for some people, especially someone like me who's very neurotic. You know what? And at the end of the day, does that matter? For a lot of collectors, maybe it won't. Maybe the security that's there is enough. Maybe the grade that's right, that's enough. And maybe hopefully that these things sell for the same as CGC. That's the big issue. If they do that, we're all going to be in good shape. That's the main thing. So Dams One says, hopefully the grades are more accurate than their card grades. I submitted cards to get higher grades that did nothing but crack it out the slab. That's what I heard, is that I hate to say it this way, but they kind of manipulate their card grading to let there not be a lot of super high grade cards like 10. But because the grading scale is different on comics, it remains to be seen. But I did bring this up earlier. But you know, if they graded cards with 9.2, 9.4, maybe it would be more consistent. But I actually like that they don't do that. But I understand why they kept the comics grading the way they did, because you don't want to upset the masses and go in a totally different direction. So, guys, with that said, it's been a great 90 minutes. We had a lot of great conversation about this. I think it's an important topic, an important thing that's going to be happening next year, and we're all looking forward to it. And I hope Manu is able to take all the feedback that we've given them today and go back to them and say, hey, this is what kind of I'm hearing from collectors. Let's do the best that we can to appease them, because that's going to give you a better chance to take market share from the other grading companies, especially CGC. At the end of the day, if they hit on all those notes and still don't get value, top value, I don't think it's going to matter. If they can hit on all those notes and get value, the value that CGC gets, they're going to hit it out of the park. Because like Manu said earlier, people will come over just for PSA. And that is good for comic book prices. It is good for comic book collectors, getting more people into the hobby. So think about it. Hopefully we get some more insight over the next couple of months and the early portion next year. I'm hoping that, hey, Manu, if you can get me someone over at PSA to, when they do finally start sending these slabs out, to send me one, I would love that. Not necessary, but if you can, that'd be awesome. Think about everything that we talked about today and think about what's important to you. And then, like I said, drop me new comments, send PSA info, do whatever you can, because it only benefits us. Great talking. Have a great night all. I'll do my best to get them to act on a request. Getting the announcement was definitely a step in the right section. 100%. This has been all over YouTube today. So it is great press for them, to say the least. So we're hoping that they get it right. Again, guys, I always thank you for joining me tonight. It's been a ride. If you're not subbed to the channel, you're definitely missing out. We do a lot of stuff here on the channel. Thanks to everyone in the chat, especially the Mighty Militia. Like always, this is Lawrence over at Mighty Comics and Collectibles saying thank you for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon.